Greetings and welcome to another episode of Two Lane Tales with Bob Boze and Stuart Rosebrook, brought to you by the 66 Kids and the Tombstone Monument Ranch and the True Ranch Connection.
Welcome to the world of the 66 Kids. We're talking Two Lane Tales. I'm Bob Boze, and I'm here with Stuart Rosebrook.
Howdy, Bob.
You know, we need to get Jim Hinckley back. That guy has great stories, and we had him on the show before, but we did not cover half of what he knows. And he's on the air with us again. Hi, Jim.
How are we doing today, guys?
Hey, we're doing great. You know, Stuart is really excited he's never been on the longest section, surviving section of Route 66. Tell us about that.
Oh, gosh, that's a great stretch of road. You can actually pick it up off near Crookton Road off I-40. There's the 1924 Partridge Creek Bridge just west of Ash Fork. And from there, you can drive all the way down to the Colorado River down at Topok. Depending which alignment you drive, it's 153 to 158 miles. I generally call it 160 miles of smiles.
That's a mile. 160 miles of smiles. That's fantastic.
So Jim, how many days should you give yourself to arrive that 160 miles?
Well, if you want to see everything that there is to see and really explore it, you know, I'm not sure. I've been doing it since 1959, and I still haven't seen everything.
You know, they do the fun run. They still do it, don't they, Jim? The fun run in May.
Yeah.
In the first weekend in May. And my father and I, my father had a 49 Ford that had been in the family, original miles, bought in Fort Dodge, Iowa. And we used to run that and in the fun run. And here was the drill. We had to get up at 4 a.m., and he had a tag car. He had a Lincoln behind it, and then I would drive the 49 Ford, and we had to drive to Seligman, which was the exact route we went when we went to Iowa. We stopped in Seligman at the Copper Cart Cafe, and the last time I was there with my son and my dad on the fun run, we ate at the Copper Cart. It's no longer a restaurant now. But you get there, and there was sometimes 500, 700 cars. Have you ever seen more cars than that, Jim?
Yeah, they've been running 800 to 1,000
cars. And so the morning before the race, I think it starts at 9 or something like that, and they all line up, and it's just this literal muscle car. There's whole sections of Camaros and 57 T-Birds and Corvettes, and you're just walking, and it's fantastic.
You know, that event really encapsulates Route 66 in the era of Renaissance. I work with two tour companies organizing events, doing things for them, one based in Australia, one in New Zealand, and they make the Route 66 Fun Run part of their annual spring tours. And it's really interesting. I have seen everything on that fun run from a 1908 Cadillac to a restored 1956 Greyhound Scenic Cruiser bus.
That's fantastic. So then Angel Delgadillo, he actually does the flag thing the last time I was there, and everybody takes off, and then they go. The next stop is Peach Springs, right, Jim?
Grand Canyon Caverns, then Peach Springs.
Right, and they usually, the communities have an activity there. I was there in Peach Springs when they had Indian dancers out there and stuff. And then you go, and everybody's stopping along the edges, and there's like a picnic and people dancing, and there's bands out there. And then you go from Peach Springs, and then you go, Hyde Park, and then Truxton, maybe? Help me here. Hackberry?
Yeah, there's not much left in Truxton. Hyde Park is gone. Yeah. And so they run into Hackberry. The Hackberry General Store gets packed, and then Terrace Point, and then into Kingman, where they block off the streets downtown.
And so they have a big to-do in Kingman on that night, and then in the morning, everybody gets up and goes to Oatman.
So it starts in Seligman.
It starts in Seligman, westbound,
West.
and it's 160 miles of smiles, buddy. I got to say that's
now.
A great
Do they take
slogan.
over both lanes, or is it one lane?
No. It's a workable highway. Still, it's a local highway, and so you gotta drive it as it is. But what's great is that you'll pass a whole bunch of Model Ts, and there's these old fuddy-duddies. They got the outfits on. It's fantastic. You got any stories, Jim?
It's a great street. It really is a great street party. It's a 3-day block party covering 160 miles and anything and everything with wheels. I have seen people ship their cars from Norway, 59 Chevys, to drive it. There's a fella named Ernie Adams that lives down in Phoenix. I don't know if you know him. He builds and races dwarf cars.
Yes. I have a picture of myself with a turquoise shirt on next to his turquoise mini Mercury. And people think I'm a giant. And he makes these cars out of refrigerators. Yeah. And they're letter perfect. He drives them. And it's just letter perfect. I wish this was TV. I'd show it to you right now. Better yet, go on the tour.
He's up here every year with one of his cars. A couple of years ago, he was up here. He made a miniature 40 Ford convertible. And he's up here. And like I say, you'll find people with 1908 Cadillacs. But this really is Route 66 it's always been the road of dreams.
Yeah.
And it still is. But now, in the era of Renaissance, some of these dreams get just a tad bit bizarre, some of the things you see.
Yeah.
Jim, I think back to these inspiring stories of my father driving from Virginia out west on Route 66. And he had a chance a few years ago to travel with Terry Moore and do some stories for Arizona Highways. And for some reason, I was able to convince my parents when I was going to college at Wake Forest. They allowed me to drive from Los Angeles to Winston-Salem by myself in 1980, I think 82, 83, 84, 85. And I got to drive some of those stretches of Route 66, like through Williams, the last stretches that were still, were not bypassed. Mm-hmm. But there is the dream of driving across this country is still one of the greatest acts of freedom that you can commit in the United States, and you do the freedom you feel on that highway, whether it's Route 66 or I-40, I think is one of the draws that brings people from around the country. And then the nostalgia of being able to drive the original road, and take that stretch. It really gets, once you do transcontinental driving and you drive the mother road, you can't stop doing it. You've got to get back out on the highway. And obviously, you have met many of those people that have come to Kingman.
There's a lot of great highways. US 6 is a really fascinating highway. It's got a lot of the mom and pop stuff, but it does not have its own international fan club. It doesn't have the infectious enthusiasm that you meet with people along the road.
Now, US 6, I lived in Iowa for 9 years, and US 6, it goes across the southern tier, one of the southern tier highways of Iowa into Nebraska and then Colorado. We lived in the Midwest for 9 years. And one of my big trips I did with my dad, we got off the interstate as soon as we could when we got into Iowa. And those are great roads. And you're right. I always tell my kids that you will see the country from basically the ground up on the old U.S. highways. You can watch how the football fields are replaced by rodeo grounds, or at least there's a rodeo ground next to every football field the further west you go across Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. And you really get a great feel for our country and the people that have the grit to live out in the, in what people call the flyover states. But they live out there and keep the country going out in those small towns.
You'll find places, on Route 66, the thing that's unique, another thing that's unique is people will quit six-figure jobs and buy a 1930s crack house motel and renovate it and turn it into a destination. Or you'll meet people on Route 66 like Nick Adam at the Ariston Cafe. His father was a Greek immigrant and established the Ariston Cafe in the 1920s. And right up until about 2 years ago, it was a one-family-owned cafe. It's still going. And Nick now is pushing 90.
And what town is that in again, Jim?
Ariston Cafe is in Litchfield, Illinois.
Okay.
Hey, now, Jim, while we're talking about cafes, give us an insider's view, because you're up and down that road. Is there what's left that you just have to get that pecan pie? You just have to get that green chili. Give us a few that you think are still worthy.
You haven't seen me in a while. I look like I swallow a watermelon whole. I drive up and down the road. I eat a lot of good pie and cobbler. The Clanton's Cafe in Veneta, Oklahoma. That's one family owned since 1927.
God,
They've got delicious four-berry cobbler. I like the Ariston Cafe is just absolutely a real treasure in Jim. There's Frisco's Grill in Cuba, Missouri, is just superb. And then out west here, well, we've got quite a few of them around this. The Falcon Restaurant up in Winslow is still pretty decent. And that was started by a couple of brothers from Greece in the 1950s. Over in Victorville, you got Imogene's Holland Burger. That dates back to about 1948-49.
Victorville, wow.
We call it Victimville, but that's another story entirely.
That's murder and mayhem.
Just down the road from Hysteria, California.
Yeah, Hysteria. That's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about, you know Michael Wallace, don't you? That
yes.
Author, yeah. And he's the one who is the genesis, I understand, for the mega hit movie Cars. And that, as I heard the story, is it Pixar that made that? Pixar rented 10 big black Humvees and with riders in it, and they went on this tour with Michael Wallace, and they ended up in Sligman, and that's became Radiatorville. That the genesis of that mega movie. I was in El Salvador, and a mother says, "Oh, you look like a cowboy," and I said, "Yeah." And the son says, "Do you know Cars?" I was like, well, there's an odd twist to a guy wearing a cowboy hat. But this is a big deal. What can you tell us about the genesis of that movie? Do you know?
The movie Cars really introduced a whole new generation of young folk to Route 66. And, you're seeing the fruits we're bearing now because of that movie. Reese Martin in Oklahoma, he's now the president of the Oklahoma Route 66 Association. His wife's on the state centennial committee. They're youngsters, somewhere around 40 years old. They've gotten into that through Cars. China became obsessed with that movie before COVID, and that sparked a tsunami of interest in Route 66 and two-lane travel in America. Michael Wallace worked with David Lasseter on that and introduced them to some of the characters. A lot of the characters in that movie, like Fillmore, the VW bus character, that was Bob Waldmeyer.
From Hackberry,
Yeah, Hackberry General Store. But his father invented the Cozy Dog, the corn dog, out at the Amarillo Army Airfield during WW2, and had a restaurant in Springfield, Illinois. And then most of the characters in that movie are real people on Route 66.
Jim, what happened to Sal and Magley's? I used to take my family on some great road trips from the Phoenix area and Orem School, and we would drive up to Wyoming, and we would always take a jump to get to Holbrook. We'd leave early so we could have a long day, get where we needed to go. We'd stay in Holbrook, and we coming and going, we'd stop at that great Mexican-American food restaurant, and they had notebooks on the counter the last time I was there showing all these diagrams of the movie Cars, and that the writers had come to Holbrook. But has that restaurant closed? And was Holbrook also an inspiration for Cars?
Yeah, Joe and Aggie's cafe there in Holbrook. A lot of places tried to capitalize on the movie Cars. They claim to be Radiator Springs, and and you'd be surprised how many tow trucks have turned up along the highway.
Oh, yeah.
Being told that people are being told that that's the tow mater from the movie Cars. They've really capitalized on that. Michael Wallace was one of the pioneers in the Route 66 Renaissance movement. Angel Delgadillo up in Seligman, Michael Wallace, Jim Ross, Jerry McClanahan, all were just real pioneers in giving this highway a new lease on life.
Hey, we're going to take a little break here. We're going to come back with the conclusion, and we're going to find out an Angel Delgadillo story that's never been told.
Well, I love this. My good friend Paul Hutton said this about the 66 Kid. Bob Bosbell has journeyed down many roads in his multifaceted life: musician, artist, radio and television personality, author, publisher, historian, devoted husband and father. But all roads lead back to Kingman, Arizona, and the Mother Road. Buckle up and enjoy one wild ride. I couldn't say it any better than that. This is a book about growing up on Route 66 back in its heyday when gas was not cheap, especially in Kingman, Arizona. But we would probably cut your fan belts. It's got tons of stories about the bands I was in, all the mischief I got into, and you're going to enjoy it. It's called The 66 Kid, and I'm working on a new book now called The 66 Kid, plural, with Marshall Trimble, who is the historian for the state of Arizona. And it's going to be a dilly as well.
And where can they get it?
Check it out at bobbosbell.com, or you can check it out at the66kids.com.
Thank you, Bob. Always enjoy reading and hearing your stories. And thank you for all you do. And thank you, Stuart. And by the way, the True Ranch Collection is a selection of historic dude ranches offering guests an authentic Western experience. And they are the proud sponsors of Two Lane Tales. Now, the True Ranch Collection is committed to maintaining the hospitality and the heritage of the Western dude ranches. We aim to preserve the historic tradition of dude ranching, from its celebration of the Western heritage to its history as an early destination vacation in the United States. And yet it's a modern experience that you will enjoy. For you, your company, your family, let's go. Go to the TrueRanchCollection.com. That's TrueRanchCollection.com.
We're back, and we're talking to our good friend, Jim Hinckley. Just some really great stories, Jim. I was wondering, do you have a good Angel Delgadillo story, who, of course, is considered the father of Route 66 revived? What is his designation? Do you know?
You know, he's one of the few people in life you can actually be truly envious of. You know, his small town, he still has, he finally quit cutting hair a couple years ago, but he's now 95, 96. But he still has the barber shop that with his dad's barber chair. And he still lives in a house with his wife. He lives in the house that he was born in.
Jeez.
In Seligman. And he's just world famous. He's done Super Bowl commercials, you name it. But he was a pioneer. He saw his hometown dying, and so he jumped on that, found a way to breathe life into this and create a movement. And the great story about Angel is a recent one. They just unveiled an exhibit at the Powerhouse in Kingman that they interviewed Angel for hours, and it's a unique virtual reality. You can ask Angel questions. He gets up, talks to you. But he received a national award in Washington, D.C. recently. And Crystal Burge here in Kingman, she's quite a restaurant owner. She gave up her private jet to fly Angel and his family to Washington, D.C. to receive his award.
Wow. That's amazing.
Small town barber that changed the world.
Yeah, and he It's such a great story. And I'm proud to say he cut my hair. I was when I was on the trip with my father and my son, he was still cutting hair. And I said, well, what kind of an idiot wouldn't get their hair cut by the legend of Route 66? And it was a good haircut, by the way. He gave me a story. Go ahead,
Bob.
No, he gave me some crap, but that's to be expected in a small town.
Hey, Jim, I've got a quick question for you. We're talking about food earlier, and we're talking about Seligman. One of the things that my dad always said that you can judge a good diner by is by its hamburger or a good, shake. So tell us a little bit about if you're traveling along Route 66 in Arizona, where do you stop for a good hamburger and a shake?
West Side Lilo's up in Seligman is really good. And right across the street, the Roadkill Cafe is pretty darn good.
Yeah, it is.
And another one in Seligman, of course, is the Snowcap Drive-In, still there since '53.
Yeah, still
Those
cranking
are all
it.
Excellent. Grand Canyon Caverns, they make a pretty mean burger there, and they have fresh baked pies.
Oh, I'm getting hungry right now. I think it's going to take me a week.
think we got a road trip going here.
Now, here's an anecdote about Grand Canyon Caverns. In around 1959, 1960, my father was working with Bishop White down in Phoenix, and they were in the advertising business, and they got the account for the Grand Canyon Caverns, but they didn't have a whole lot of money. So I have in a box somewhere some shares in the Grand Canyon Caverns. So tell us what's going on at the Grand Canyon Caverns today.
Well, it's that attraction really mirrors the entire evolution of Route 66. The story is a couple of drunk cowboys found the entrance to that in the early 20s, and it's right along the National Old Trails Road just off Route 66. And they started developing it as initially they thought they'd find gold treasure. They went down and explored the cave, didn't find much, but they homesteaded the property, filed a claim, and then they launched what they called dope on a rope. They'd start charging people 2 bits, and they'd put them in an oversized bucket with a hand winch and give them a lantern, lower them down in the cavern, and let them wander around.
Dope on a rope.
Yeah, that's good. Honey, let's stop there.
There's a couple stories where these guys lowered somebody down in the cavern, and they proceeded to drink and forgot about the people until the next day.
Yeah.
But the thing began to progress in the 1930s. They put in a wooden staircase and drawbridge, whatnot, coming down from the natural entrance. They used a lot of the leftover lumber or used lumber from concrete forms up at Boulder Dam, Hoover Dam. And then the 1950s, they put in an elevator. And by the late 50s, that was the number 2 attraction in the state of Arizona. And the 4-lane segment of Route 66 in front of the caverns tells you everything you need to know. In 61 or 62, when they did that, that was the only 4-lane alignment of Route 66 between Albuquerque and Los Angeles that was not in an urban area.
Wow.
How about that?
Now the Havasupai tribe owns it, and they're developing it. There's a restaurant down in the caverns. They have the world's darkest motel room down in the cavern.
I still can't get past dope on a rope, but how would you sell that? No wonder you have these stock shares in your closet.
My dad would love to hear these stories.
Because, I can just sit again, hey, Dad, can we stop a dope on a rope? No, don't be a dope. Shut up. We're going to Iowa. Well, Jim, this has been absolutely fantastic, and we could talk to you all day. You are a true treasure, young man. My Kingman compadre.
Jim, we're going to have you back on the show many times, so we're looking forward to 2 Lane Tales and keeping our audience ready to travel and learn more about the Old West along its greatest highways.
I've been told I can do this for hours, even if I'm the only one in the room and still enjoy myself.
Well, how about that Jim Hinckley, my Kingman compadre? He is a force of nature, isn't he?
He sure is. I'm ready to go to the Grand Canyon Caverns and do a hamburger road trip just from Kingman to Seligman and back. I'm gonna have to maybe do it more than a fun run to run all that good food off. But I'm really looking forward to getting up on Route 66.
Myself included. We got to do a road trip, compadre.
I'm ready.
Well, that's a wrap, folks. Thank you for joining us for the 66 Kids and Two Lane Tales. And we invite you to come back again. We're here every week, so make it a point to put the top down and join us going down Route 66. And this program is brought to you by the Tombstone Monument Ranch and the True Ranch Collection.